I'd like to call to order this regular council meeting of the town of Saugeen Shores and welcome everyone in the chambers. The first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind every member of your responsibility to do so. There's none. The next item is additions, deletions, or amendments, and we have nothing under that. Item 4 is adoption of minutes. So it's been moved by Councillor Dave Mayette, seconded by Councillor Grace, that council adopt the minutes of the council meeting of January the 9th, 2017 as presented. Any errors or omissions? Not. All in favor? Carried. The next is committee of the whole minutes of January the 9th, and it's been moved by excuse me, Councillor Mike Mayette, seconded by Councillor Madison, that council note and file the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of January the 9th, 2017 as presented. Any errors or omissions? All in favor then? That's carried. So the next item on the agenda is a report of the Committee of the Whole. It's in a general government report dated January the 9th, 2017, and it's been moved by Councillor Neil Minaj and seconded by Councillor Mike Mayette. The Council of Town of Saugeen Shores adopts the general government report dated January the 9th, 2017, recommending that Council approve the concept drawings and directs staff to implement the tender process for the enhanced beach house at Port Elgin Main Beach, and that the services for did I get the wrong one? Okay. We'll get to that one next. It's been moved by Councillor Madison, seconded by Councillor Mike Mayette, that Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores adopts the Community Services Parks and Recreation Report dated January the 9th, 2017, recommending that the August 14th and December 25th, 2017 Council and Committee of the Whole meetings be cancelled. Any discussion on this? Questions? If not, all in favor? That's carried. So the next item is the Community Services Parks and Recreation Report of January the 9th, 2017, and it's been moved by Councillor Mayette, seconded by Minaj, seconded by Councillor Mike Mayette. That Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores adopts the Community Services Parks and Recreation Report dated January the 9th, 2017, recommending that the Council approves the concept drawings and directs staff to implement the tender process for the enhanced beach house at the Port Elgin Main Beach, and that the services for tendering and contract administration by Steinhoff Building Services Group be approved at $14,700. Questions or comments? Start over here, Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you. Through you, just a question. The Steinhoff contract, the wording in there about contract administration, in the event that the whole thing doesn't go forward because the tenders come back and they're such that they're not possible, this is it for this company, whether or not we actually do it, right? Thank you.
Councillor Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, quick question with regard to the beach house. Would it be possible to have, when we're getting the plans done in phases? I'm a little hesitant to. I know we need the work done now. We have to fix the washroom facility, but I'm hesitant at the price of it, and I'm hearing a lot of comments about that. Is there some way we'll be able to look at that, and if we do it in phases, say phase 1 is the washroom renovations and facade, phase 2 we can do the side stuff. It's one of those tough ones. It's hard. $750,000 for a washroom is pretty heady, in my opinion.
I'll try and answer that question. The way the tender has been articulated is that and I think I explained this at the last meeting, the two phases, the two options is such that the existing washroom interior could be considered at a later date. Those are the only two phases that are identified right now. To do the entire project, if I'm following you correctly, in future phases, and I guess you're referring to, is there a canteen facility at a later date, will be extremely difficult. Plus, the cost can escalate immensely if you start to break it down in phases that way. The two options, like I said, if we decide to do the interior washrooms at a later date, that can easily be done, and we could do that in 2 or 3 years. The cost that you're referring to is something that I'm unaware of, and I don't know what the cost will be until we do go to tender at this point.
Okay, Councillor Benage, did you have a comment?
I have two now. So the first one I was going to say was we've heard from some people who are suggesting that the exterior finish could look different, and I know that Jane's put a lot of work into the consideration of the elements, the weather, and the winters that we get and the winds that we get. So what I would ask, my first question then to Jane is, does this RFP actually stipulate or state anything along the terms of it must include brick and mortar, or is it open? That would be my first question.
The reasoning why the existing facade was chosen was to keep prices down as it marries into the existing building for the finishes on the plant that we have down there right now. So that was really the main reason why we were looking at the brick. In saying that, though, we're also cognizant of the fact that the Recreation Master Plan acknowledges that all washrooms should look similar, have a theme to them. And that theme is very basic, and it's that green plating that we've put on a number of washrooms, particularly in Southampton. I've done a bit of a synopsis from the input that we've received from our online questionnaire, and granted that there wasn't a lot of feedback, but that certainly was a trend that I heard was reconsideration for the exterior. That's a very easy change for us to discuss with the architect to make that change into the plan itself, the tender itself.
Second question is related to the budgetary amount. The amount speculated for this particular building, and I just wanted to be clear, and I wanted to hear Jane agree if possible. I understood it was a $1.4 million total placeholder, and that there were multiple phases, and one of them was the washroom expansion and the focus point as you come down the Green Street Hill. Another one is an extension of the boardwalk. A third one is parking lot improvements. So when you marry all these together, I still believe that they are being phased. And certainly Len Perdue had come to our meetings, our waterfront meetings, and suggested that Harbor Street was due for a makeover there as well, and that would be a full curb and gutter arrangement, and that we had drainage issues to deal with, and the water coming down the Green Street Hill was going to be dealt with so it didn't flood out and wash the sand out and cause pollution in the beach area. So all of these are, I believe, and Jane, I'll let Jane correct me or agree with me, that these are all part of that phasing into the full amount of $1.4 million, and this is a piece of that.
I'll just comment that I don't, I think that 1.4 million was put into the budget to stimulate these types of conversation, and these, to my mind, are really, we're just starting to get to where we're starting to implement. Council has not had discussions about all of those things that you've mentioned, Neil. I think we went back to the Waterfront Committee to come back with some ideas about how to implement the waterfront plan, but those discussions we will have as we go forward to deal with this 1.4 million. Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And anybody who's done any work to their house will know that these things are expensive. Of renovation, just a renovation's expensive, let alone a huge addition. I mean, these numbers they're expensive things to do, particularly if you want them to look nice. It's personal for me because I'm renovating my house right now, and it's costing me an arm and a leg. But anyway, on the question of the exterior, I've heard a lot of that feedback, just personally, in the community about the thing looking like a fortress, that kind of comment. And I think there's a bit of merit to what's being said about it. And I would say that I think that it should be reviewed, and I think it should be reviewed in context of the Port Elgin Branding Toolkit, which is an important document on the main beach and everywhere in Port Elgin. And I think it should be reviewed in context of the history of the Port Elgin main beach. I think it would be a big win for the town of Saugeen Shores to look at that exterior and to look back at the Cedar Crescent Casino and to look at that facade and mimic some of what that had. I think we could go back and we could look at some of the history and also some of the documents we have on file, and perhaps look beyond our washroom. It's not a washroom, right? I mean, that was a clear directive internally from staff. It's not, we're not building a washroom, we're building the beach house, and so maybe we should look beyond what our criteria are for what our washroom should look like, and make it look like a beach house, and give it that. I don't know who around the table or who said last time, talked about the wow factor. It was certainly repeated in the press a fair bit, and I think that's would be great if we get that wow factor. And I don't know if you'll get it by making it look like every other washroom in town, right? So, and I just can't, I can't stress enough on this point that the future will not thank you for cheaping out and making it look like a barn, or for doing it halfway. I can say that because we go back and look at some of the things we did do that way, and we don't thank the people before who did those things. And you wouldn't go back. I guarantee you, 100 years ago, when they were building the Southampton Town Hall, there were a lot of people in Southampton who said, "This is a fishing village. Are you nuts? Why are you building that thing? It's huge, and it's crazy. And why are you doing that?" And I can't imagine one person in the entire community going back in today and saying, "Don't build it." Because the future thanks them for doing that work, for having spent that money and for having done that stuff. And they will thank you for spending money here and doing a good job. They may not thank you today. They may tell you you're crazy today. But the right thing is to do something great there, make it great, and make it stand out and give it the wow factor. So I hope the tenders come in good. I hope they come in reasonably. But I really hope we move forward with this, and I hope we make it look good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rich?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So, just so I'm clear on what we're doing, this is just creating a tendering and contract process to see what we do. But is the design done? Because we have people speaking about the design. Like, is there an opportunity to do what Luke's talking about, or what are we?
Yeah, I will remind council in my previous report that I did indicate that the plans had also gone through the Waterfront Advisory Committee a number of times, and that committee has been endorsed by council to assist with making those decisions. We also have gone through the process of online feedback, and did not receive a considerable amount of feedback, and had it was fairly down the middle of the road for pros and cons against it. But those comments that, as I said, there were some obvious trends, and that was the exterior. We will meet back with the consultant, with the architect tomorrow morning to review those and critique the plans as much as we possibly can, still keeping in mind that the main focus of the facility has been established, so to speak. These are some tweaks that we will do, and then open it up for the tender process to see what we come in. Obviously, we're somewhat anxious to go through that process sooner than later, and I know I can tell you one of the comments was that why not do it in the fall? I can tell you in the fall it will cost more to build it, and there was concerns that it would be going into July. Absolutely, we don't want to do it in the summertime, but keep in mind it is one summer of inconvenience. It's unfortunate that it's the summer of the 150th if this is approved. But we're not going to remember that next year. You're not going to remember that in 25 years. You're not going to remember that in 40 years. You're going to have the beach house facility there. So it is a year of inconvenience if it is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question through you to Jane. Jane, once the tendering document has been received back, and when we see the dollar amount, are those? I know you've done it online and reposted the sketches and so on and so forth. But at any point down like whether it's March, April, or before we actually go to build it, are we going back to the public with this at all? Like in terms of placing the sketches out there in a room, come out to an open house and see what we're doing, or are we as a council basically saying, let's go to tender? Got the drawings done. It's been a long process. We're getting to the point now. We're going to get the price. We're going to build it. Does the community have an opportunity at all between now and the construction date? I'm sure there's going to be lots of discussion around the table about the dollar amount. I heard Councillor Matheson say $750. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion about the price and phasing in and so on and so forth. We'll have the discussion for another day. But I'm just wondering, will the public have additional opportunity once we get the pricing? Will we be displaying those pictures at all of what we're actually setting out to do, Jane, or is this it?
It was not our intentions to go through another community process. If it's council's wishes that we do, then we certainly can go through that process, keeping in mind that it prolongs it. But if council is fine with that, then we can certainly do that.
Any further questions on this? If not, then all in favor? Opposed? That carries. The next item on the agenda is report of municipal officers, and it's a staff report to do with Fairy Lake, the hazard tree removal contract award. I guess there is a report with it also, and I'll read the motion. If there's any questions, we can take them. It's been moved by Councillor Grace, second by Councillor Dave Mayette. The council authorizes approval to contract the services of Ontario line clearing and tree experts for the removal of ash trees in Fairy Lake Park at a cost of $81,360, including HST. Comments, questions? Councillor Grace.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Jane. Jane, do you have any idea how much we'll be paying or we're expecting to pay the SVCA for sort of managing the project?
Yeah, I believe it was indicated about, I want to say $15,000.
Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jane, you indicate in the report that there was a wide range of responses, and I mean, it's always, I understand opening tendering processes that there's no bias, but it's always nice to have local people employed wherever possible. Was there any discretion room there to look at using, or were they even close? Was any of our local contractors even close to that? Because it seems like these guys came in significantly less than even what we had conceived.
To be honest, there really wasn't any local contractors that bid. Extremely, it was a wide range of, we were very surprised at the amount of where these contractors came from and how many of them came to the on-site meeting as well.
And as part of that, are they all cognizant of the stipulations around transporting and moving diseased ash trees?
Yeah, and hence the reason why we've brought Saugeen Valley into this conversation. Obviously, they're the experts. We've done on-the-job training more or less, so we take their lead in all of this. And what I really like throughout this process is that they are extremely cognizant in how the site is left. So what I mean by that is, as they're removing trees, what damage is done at the time when we should start to remove trees, all of that. So they're taking the lead, and it's money well spent throughout this process because of the sensitivity of it.
Okay, good luck.
Councillor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when we get a financial report and things don't go our way, there's usually a financial impact statement that says we will take money from this reserve account, or we'll take money from here to top up the money that's required. If I'm reading this correctly, we are going to save money on the budgeted item. Is there a statement that could be made in the future on these kinds of financial reports that says the financial impact is, and that these funds will now go? We just passed a budget with the difference, in my opinion. Where is the difference going, and should it or could it have been part of this report? Thank you.
We can ask the treasurer for that, but I think, that would be a council decision if you wanted to spend that extra money, or if it was less or whatever. I mean, we can deal with that at any time. I'm not too sure if you start to talk about other projects on this one, then I think we confuse the issue. I think the way to deal it would be, if there's a surplus, then we can go back to the treasurer or CAO to come up with some ideas. And if you want to speak to it, go ahead.
I believe this project was to be funded from the future capital projects reserve, so it just means that we won't be transferring all of the money out of that reserve account.
Maybe that's what should have been included in the statement, then that's fine. Okay, Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you. The staff report from December, though, did say that the $225,000 was related to removal, restoration, and some new tree planting. So this number doesn't yet include replacing some trees. So that I'm hoping is coming. Just a comment, I actually attended, David was there, I don't know if anybody else. We were at the meeting at the museum about this project, and there was a lot of interest. What came across loud and clear to the people there was that the Conservation Authority was going to be very, very deliberate in making sure that the area was taken care of properly, nothing was damaged that shouldn't be damaged, and that the restoration spot on. So she talked about, being on-site babysitting. So I think we don't have anything to worry about that. But when would we expect to see some comments about the aftermath of the removals? Is that coming from Frank?
Yeah, we can certainly provide a report for you throughout this process, and I think I've made comment in here of our continued communication, not just with council, but obviously with the municipality. From the numbers that attended the meeting, people are obviously passionate about Fairy Lake. So we'll continue to keep abreast all of the information as we proceed through this process. As far as timelines, that's difficult for us to determine, and it's all weather dependent. And right now, it looks like April outside, so it is not an ideal time to remove trees right now. Obviously, we want the ground to be frozen. So at this point, once obviously approval from tonight is received, we'll be meeting with SVCA personnel and deciding how we're going to move forward in getting this done.
Councillor Minaj.
I just had a follow-up thought, Mr. Mayor, and not that I want to throw money around, but I think this is a small H historical event, and I wondered if there was an opportunity to capture some sort of photography collage of what it looked like before they were killed off, what it looks like as they're being removed, and what it looks like in the replanting scheme, and give it some historical significance and documentation. By that effect, I would expect some sort of good amateur photographer or professional photographer or somebody with a drone be able to take some pictures to support this work.
Okay. You had a comment? Councillor Rich.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking of the historical value, are they taking the wood away, or are we doing something with it, or is there anything way we could keep some of it for ourselves to use?
Yeah, obviously once we approach the contractor, the approved contractor, that's something we're going to negotiate with them. We'd like some consideration given to possibly the woodworking class at school, at the local high school, to see if they could do something with it as well. There is a limited opportunity to reuse some of this ash, unfortunately. We have even had conversations in regard to the plans indicate a lookout. Could the lookout be built from some of this ash? And unfortunately, they couldn't. But there potentially could be some other opportunities that will leave lasting legacies around Fairy Lake of what was at one point.
Okay. If there's no further comments, then we'll take the question. All in favor? Motion carried. The next item on the agenda are bylaws, and the first one is to authorize a non-union wage agreement. Excuse me. It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, seconded by Councillor Rich, that bylaw 4-2017, being a bylaw to establish the salaries and wages of non-union employees and certain officers of the town of Saugeen Shores for the year 2017 is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 23rd day of January 2017. Any questions to the motion or bylaw? All in favor? Oh, sorry, a question? Sorry. Councillor Mike Myatt.
Can I just, while we're on the topic of the increases, I'm just wondering, number 3, members of council grant 2% effective January 2017, which I think is right on. And I think slow and easy wins the race. We need to keep pace. As a matter of fact, I think we're probably much lower than a lot of municipalities. The question I had through you, Mr. Mayor, to our CAO, David, I think a while back we talked about a wage review study for councillor wages, and I'm just wondering where we're at with that. Is that something that's going to be completed in the first, second, third, fourth quarter of 2017, or where are we at with that wage review? Or is there one coming?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely there is one coming. Councillor, I'm not exactly sure which quarter it's scheduled for. Normally what we do is for members of council, we do a wage review in anticipation for implementation after the election. Right. So folks are aware of what the opportunity is if they decide to put their name forward. So we would time the entire process and report to be approved by this council, but not to be implemented until after the election.
So, Mr. Mayor, just to follow up then, David, in that report, will it address things like some municipalities have I think the wage for councillors here, 15,000, works at maybe $10 an hour. It's not that we're overpaid, and at least I don't think we are. So, will your report address things like perhaps rather than the $15,000 rate where there's a base salary, if like some municipalities do with $10,000 in the base rate, and then there your 100 whatever the amount is to attend a committee meeting, or will that report address that at all, or will it be strictly just what the total wage is? Pardon, that's not even a wage; it's an honorarium for the year. So will it address things like, will it make recommendations saying this is what council should consider in terms of what I just addressed about the base plus so much per meeting?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't comment specifically, Councillor, on the end result. I can comment that normally we look at total compensation for members of council, which can include their stipend or other benefits they may receive. Certainly, my experience doing these is you look at comparable communities and you look at what other municipalities, how they approach it. I do caution that sometimes when you reinvent how the compensation works, it does raise lots of flags, but certainly that is something that we should be reviewing with a critical eye on a fairly regular basis. Once per term makes sense. The clerk and I and human resource manager will put together our schedule and brief council on our suggested approach.
Okay. No further questions then. I'll call all in favor of this motion. Opposed, if any. That's carried. Next item is a bylaw to authorize an official plan amendment for 1837 Bruce Road 33, and it's been moved by Councillor Rich, second by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, that bylaw 5-2015, being a bylaw to adopt amendment number 8 to the Town of Saugeen Shores Local Official Plan 90-2012 by 510196 NB Limited, McDonald, for lands known municipally as 1837 Bruce Road 33, Saugeen Township, Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 23rd day of January 2017. Any questions or comments to the motion or bylaw? All in favor then? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The next item is a zoning bylaw amendment for the same piece of property. And it's been moved by Vice Deputy Mayor Huber, seconded by Councillor Minaj, that bylaw 6-2017, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 75-2006, being the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the Town of Saugeen Shores by 510196 NB Limited, MacDonald, for lands known municipally as 1837 Bruce Road 33, Saugeen Township, Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 23rd day of January 2017. Any questions or comments to the motion or bylaw? All in favor then? Opposed, if any? That's carried. And the next one is authorize an agreement, a bylaw to authorize an agreement with Miramichi Shores. And it's been moved by Councillor Minaj, seconded by Vice Deputy Mayor Huber, that bylaw 7-2017, being a bylaw to authorize the entering into of an agreement with Miramichi Shores Limited, is hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 23rd day of January 2017. Questions or comments to the motion or bylaw? If not, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. So the next item on the agenda is closed to public, and I have a motion that's been moved by Vice Deputy Mayor Huber, seconded by Councillor Minaj, that council move into closed to public session to discuss two matters. One, in accordance with bylaw 63-2015, section 3.8.2b, regarding a personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, to discuss appointments to the committees of council, and in accordance with Bylaw 63-2015, Section 3.8.2D, regarding labor relations or employee negotiations to discuss union negotiations. All in favor? That's carried. We'll
I have a motion moved by Councillor Rich, seconded by Vice Deputy Mayor Huber, that council arise from the close to public session and resume the regular council meeting. All in favor? That's carried. Next, I have a motion moved by Councillor Matheson, seconded by Councillor Mike Myatt, that Bylaw 8-2017, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 23rd day of January 2017. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks. And I finally have a motion moved by Councillor Mike Myatt, seconded by Councillor Matheson, that this regular council meeting of January 23rd, 2017 hereby adjourns at 9:37 p.m.